Hello again, and welcome to Patricia's Posh Life. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about a subject which you might be able to guess the topic already. And in a way, maybe it's a silly topic to a lot of people, but for those of us who are fashion conscious, enjoy fashion, love fashion, anything and everything fashion, vintage, whatever, I think you're going to enjoy this a whole lot. So today I'm talking about hats and what they mean to us and what they mean to a posh life. So clearly today I have on one of my more fun and a little bit over the top hats, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some hat etiquette. Believe it or not, yes, there is such a thing. But first of all, let me just start with a very, very brief interview to hats and their purpose and how did this all of this start, right? So goes back to ancient civilization. We have records of Egyptian hats. The population was kind of divided into two camps. One camp was they wore hats for very practical purposes, for work, to keep your hair out of your way. All the things that we wear a hat for when we're working out in the yard or playing a sport. It's just to keep your hair out of your face, and for protection a little bit, and to keep your hair from getting tangled up in anything. All of those kinds of reasons that we wear hats on the work related side. So then another side of hats were that fact that hats were used to designate your social position. And I do tend to find that we still somewhat do that in today's society. So you have events like the Royal Ascot, where the big thing is who wore what hat and where did they get the hat. We've got the Kentucky Derby, where we have all these wild crazy hats, which I love. It's one of my favorite events in the whole world to watch from a fashion sense. And it does designate that you know you have a little bit of disposable income to spend on something other than food and rent, maybe. So that's just a little bit of history about what hats meant to society at large. Um, the other thing that I thought was really, really interesting when I was doing some research about hats for this podcast was the fact that not only did hats designate a social position, but they also showed a change in the way society was behaving. So, for example, in the late 1800s, women wore these huge hats. Think Audrey Hepburn in My Fair Lady. She wore a hat so big that, no one, when she went to the horse races, she wore a hat so big no one could get anywhere near her. And they used the very long hat pins, which if you've ever been stuck by a hat pin, it's very, very painful. I have been. And it was just sort of a reflection of, women, you're not really allowed to get near a woman. They had the huge, voluminous skirts, the huge hats, feathers, straw, ribbons, the whole 9 yards. And even architecture reflected fashion. So you had doorways which were much wider than the doorways that we have now, because women and men, or two women, could not get through the doorway together in a doorway that we have in these times. So very, very interesting how fashion actually affects things like architecture and society. So once we transition from the late 1800s beginning into the 1900s, you saw a significant change in the shape and the materials that hats were made from. As we went into the early 1900s, especially in the 1920s and 30s, the cloche hat, Cloche, and everybody pronounces it a different way, so I'm just going with my southern pronunciation. Um, it was very, very close fitting hat to the head. It was made of very serviceable materials like felt. And all of my vintage guys and gals out there will know that a lot of these hats survived because they were made of these so very serviceable fabrics, they were able to survive age, time, wear, and just, society progressing. So a lot of times if you go to an antique show or go to a vintage clothing boutique, you will see cloche hats. So think of flappers from the 20s, right? Their hair was very close to their head, their hat went on, everything was very smooth. Myself, and even in men's hats, you had the bowler hat, which was very different from the more fedora style. The bowler hat was much more rounded, much more close to the head. The brim was closer to the head. So it's just really interesting to me to see how societal changes are reflected in fashion and vice versa. And the cloche hats were worn a lot in terms of female wear, by the women who were taking traditionally male oriented jobs because men were going to war, World War One, and into the 40s. Women were wearing, handkerchiefs and bandanas and things like that over their hair to work. Again, going back to that, hey, this is a work related type of hat, and that even spilled over into the social type of hat. So just a little thing to think about. I'm always fascinated by that kind of stuff. I know not everybody is, but it's very interesting because the Smithsonian and many of the, like the British Museum, will always have at least one or two feature displays that feature fashion and how clothing has developed, how hats have developed, and I'm just always really fascinated by that thing. So now that I've given you a little bit of history, let me talk about hat etiquette. Okay, so you will see, and I wanted to remind some of my viewers that occasionally, from time to time, I will do that. And it's because I have a problem with the tear duct in my right eye, and it waters a little bit. And so it's something that you'll see me do. I talked about this in one of my previous videos. But I wanted to tie this in because for someone like me who has a little bit of a physical impairment, a hat is a great thing to be able to use to somewhat camouflage that. So, you will see me as the day progresses, my right eye gets less and less eye makeup on, and I do tend to wear quite a bit of eye makeup because I enjoy it. Um, and the left eye is still the same as it was, when I did it that morning. So I sometimes, and you'll see me now, I'm using my hat to slightly disguise the fact that I have this issue with my eye. And so that's one of the things, the great kind of hidden things that you can do with hats is to, cover up. Number one, are you having a bad hair day? Number two, do you have some type of something going on? Maybe you have a rash or something that's going on in your face, and you just need a little bit more coverage and protection. And of course, we all know that hats are used as protection from the sun, right? We go to the beach, we put on a big floppy hat. There's a reason for that. And so I think hats have so many purposes, and I really love that. So let's talk about hat etiquette, like I started to share with you. So for me, it depends on the type of hat you have on. So in a hat like this, right? I'm a very huggy, touchy feely person, as anyone who knows me, they know that about me. And so people are always like, "Oh, I love your hat, but I want to hug you, but I don't like." Uh, they're kind of waiting for me to give them direction on what's the appropriate social distance, if I can use that horrible phrase, um, for somebody who wears a hat, right? So for me, it's just a matter of personal comfort. It's a matter of where, what are you feeling? What type of hat do you have on? And what kind of setting you're in as well. So I also wear hats to church. I wear gloves to church. I'm just one of those old school girls. And so, but I also don't want that to make someone else uncomfortable. Okay. So if I'm wearing a hat like this, which is somewhat crushable, it's kind of soft and then it goes right back into position, I will pull that person in to the side that is the most appropriate, like this side. And I will just kind of hold up my hat and just give them a hug and then let go of my hat. Secondly, when you're wearing a hat, you need to think about the hat coming off. I wear my hats never to be removed in public, right? Because I don't like hat head. It's not very attractive. And there's a lot of things going on under this hat that I really don't want anybody to see, like, bobby pins and things to keep my hat on, keep my hat in the right position, which is also very important. And so you want to think about, okay, am I going to a polo event, which there are a lot of polo events that require you to dress, and the women dress to the nines, and many of them have on hats. So what happens when the wind starts blowing, right? So you need to secure your hat in a comfortable way so that you can still wear it. It doesn't give you a headache. I have a tendency to have a migraine headache from now and then. So I have to be really careful about how tight my hat is, the headband. One of the great things that is happening in hats today is they are making them with this somewhat drawstring little elastic band. So you can actually tighten or loosen that to whatever fit makes you the most comfortable, which is a wonderful feature. Thank you, milliners, for making those. And but you also want that hat to stay on your head if that is the intention and the purpose of the event. If, for example, you're going to go to a wedding and there's a church service and then there's a reception, and you just want to wear your hat for the church service, um, and then you're going to be dancing and stuff, and you don't really want to be wearing your hat while you're dancing because you're one of those crazy dancers, a little bit like I am. Um, when you're dancing, just be cognizant of what your hair is going to look like when that hat comes off. So there's all kinds of videos out there about the shape of your face and finding um, the right hat shape for you. So earlier in the video, I was talking about the cloche hat, and the cloche hat is a no-go for this girl. I look ridiculous in a cloche hat. I look ridiculous in a bowler hat, which I do actually own a few of both of them. Why do I own something that does not look good on me? Well, for one, I like the historical and I do collect vintage hats. Um, and I don't buy them to wear them. I buy them to show them in my closet, and I have little mannequin heads and stuff that I put them on and display them. And so it's more of a decoration for me than it is an actual piece that I'm going to wear. The other thing that I think that many people forget about when choosing and wearing a hat is not just the shape of your face, but the size of your head. And I hope this is not insulting to anybody. So which it probably is going to be. So if you ever see a guy who just thinks he just looks amazing, he has on maybe a suit and some funky shoes, and then you get to the top of the head and he's got on one of these ridiculous teeny tiny fedora hats and thinks he looks amazing and smooth, but he actually looks like Mr. Potato Head with a little hat on, right? His head is way too big for the proportion of the hat he is wearing. So for me, it's the same example with the cloche hat. I have a tendency to have a bigger head, right? And so for me to put a small, close fitting hat on my head looks ridiculous and weird and not flattering whatsoever. So, I can wear something like a beret that is somewhat close fitting, but it's got an angle to it. It just, I just can't wear that super close, straight, I'm sorry, not straight, rounded angle on the head because I just don't I don't have a pretty head, I guess I should say, right? So think about that. Like not only the shape of your face, but the size of the hat and the shape and the size of your head. So I've been doing all this talking about hats and going on and on, but this channel is the Posh Life. What in the cat hair do hats have to do with a posh life? So, as I've said many times in my videos, my definition of the posh life is not the fact that I'm of the societal or financial level of the King of England, right? I'm not. Um, for me, the posh life is about you're creating a memorable, wonderful life full of these amazing things that are stored in your brain that you can go, hey, remember when we got dressed up and we went to this place or we did that thing and, something funny happened or what have you. I'll give you a great example. So, my husband and I are pretty private people. We spend a lot of time at home, which I think a lot of people do since the pandemic, and we enjoy that. But like everybody, we get a little bit of cabin fever every now and then, and we want to go out and just do something, just get out of the house, right? So a few weekends ago, we said, let's go. We found this new coffee place, and it is Urban Myth and Legend. They're awesome and super people, super, super people. And I really didn't want to get all gussied up. It was a day where we were somewhat resting and taking a break from phones and computers. And we have a lot going on in our life, just like everybody else, right? So um, I just thought, well, I really don't want to do all this stuff with my hair and blah, 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 blah. And so I'm just going to wear a hat. So I have a little, um, um, I don't have it in front of me. I'm sorry. I thought I put it out. Um, I have a little sun hat, big floppy sun hat, and I have a very comfortable linen dress. Tennis shoes, linen dress, big floppy hat. Check. Look look good. Look put together. But it took me maybe 15 minutes to get ready to go. Right. Which is exactly what I wanted. I didn't want to wear a sweatsuit, which I'm kind of famous for wearing Adidas tracksuits in all different colors. That's kind of my thing. And but I just didn't want to wear that, and it was very very warm outside too, and those have a tendency to get a little hot. So I get dressed. My husband and I get dressed in different parts of the house, and so I come down, and he has on a linen shirt, just kind of flopping cool, and he's got on his jeans, and he has on a appropriately sized fedora. And so we just kind of look at each other because this is just kind of what we do. And we said, okay, let's go. Here we go. Let's go get us a coffee or tea. And we go to the place and we walk in. And the very first thing the gentleman says to us, who we had met before, he goes, "You guys always look so stylish. Like I love your style. Y'all are so cool." And da 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 da. And I'm not saying this to puff myself up, but it's just people remember you when you're different. And wearing a hat is an icebreaker for a lot of people to allow them to open a conversation with you that they may feel a little bit uncomfortable, maybe reaching out to you or talking to you. So, they will say, "Oh, cool hat, whatever." And then it just kind of opens the door for a great conversation. And we met some new people, and it just turned out to be the most wonderful afternoon because people just kept coming up and saying, "What a cool hat," and "Whoa, man, where'd you get it?" and da 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 da. And so it's a way to create some memories and kind of break the ice with people. Now, I will tell you also that it also does work the other way. We do sometimes we'll overhear people saying kind of, "Well, who do they think they are?" kind of thing, right? Just because we wear a hat. Isn't that weird? But people want you, a lot of people don't want you to look different from them. It actually makes them uncomfortable, which I think is always bizarre. For me, I grew up in the 80s. Everybody wore preppy. I don't have a preppy body. I don't have kind of the straight Ralph Lauren, you know, 80 pounds is your highest weight limit. I'm a curvy girl, right? And so that look just never worked for me. And it felt like, to me, not to knock anybody's style, but for me personally, it felt like no matter what color you put on, you were always wearing a polo shirt and khakis and espadrilles and the same accessories. And I was just kind of bored with it. I like to play with different styles and jewelry and accessories and all that kind of stuff. So you just have to find your own personal style. And for me, I think hats are a great way to do that. So, a few more last comments because I was talking about hat etiquette earlier. I wanted to give some hat advice towards the end of this video. So for me, I know a lot of people just are not comfortable jumping into a creation like this, right? It is a lot. And, you do have to be comfortable wearing a hat. You have to be comfortable with things somewhat being in your sight of vision, in your line of vision. There's a lot of things to wearing a really big hat that you have to be aware of. So, a little bit of advice for me, I try to keep, when I wear a hat this size, I try to keep my accessories down to minimum level. Because if you're wearing a hat this big and there's this much stuff going on in a hat like this, you don't want your accessories to compete with your hat, right? I read the most beautiful quote that said something about, whatever is in a woman's heart, she wears on her head, which I thought was such a great way to describe a hat. And so for me, I am kind of goofbally and playful and, bibbity bobbity boo kind of girl. And so for me, a hat like this is definitely a personal expression of what's in my heart. Um, so not everybody's like me though, right? So a few tips if you're not comfortable going full blown bibbity bobbity boo, as I like to say, try what they call a fascinator. Now, fascinators are a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful transition. You'll see a lot of people in England all the time wearing these types of things. They either come with a large clip. I hope you can see that. Let me show a light colored one also. They come with a large clip underneath, and they also come with a band that's built into the fascinator. And here, it goes underneath this other piece of felt here. Um, it's connected to a headband, which can be removed. So I personally don't wear headbands. They do give me a headache, so I stay far, far away from those. But I'm totally able to clip a fascinator onto my hair and secure it, and away we go, right? And so these are very, very light. They're very comfortable, in my opinion, and you can wear them on either side of your head, different angles. Just they're very accessible to making you feel comfortable if this is your first foray into hats or you've never tried a fascinator. So I personally really, really like, I don't know if you can see that, I like the fascinators that have veils because I'm very obsessed with the 40s and that 20s, 30s, and 40s and those fashions and those styles. And I always love hats that have veils on them. And I'm probably the only person I've ever seen in the States wear a hat with a veil or a fascinator with a veil. But anyway, I really like them. I think they give you just such a great, cool, unusual, mysterious look that's fun, and people go, "Hmm, who's that person? What are they doing?" And so another really, really great icebreaker. And here is another fascinator that has sort of a mini veil on it, if you can see that. And it's just a teeny tiny little piece of veil that, even covers maybe half of your face, not the whole thing. So there's just a lot of new things. Both of these super affordable. Amazon, can millions of colors. Just, I think they're wonderful and a great way to play with jumping in to wearing a hat. So try putting a hat into your everyday life, whether it's just a big old floppy beach hat with a sundress, or if it's something more formal like one of your fascinators, or you want to go big old whole hog Kentucky Derby Royal Ascot, type of look, I recommend that too. And somebody said to me the other day, they said, "Oh my gosh, you always look so interesting. All your outfits are so different. What I would never have anywhere to wear these types of things." And I was like, "Sweetie, um, I'm not going to the Kentucky Derby. I'm in a coffee shop with this on. You have to make your own occasion." And that is what, for me, is the posh life, right? You make your own events, you make your own memories, you create just this wonderful world where you can have your own style and you're comfortable with it, whether other people are or not. And you and your spouse, your boyfriend, whatever, you're just enjoying life, having tea, drinking coffee, just making a mundane event, taking it a little bit higher level and adding a little bit more elegance to your life. So that is my huge rant today about hats. As you can tell, it's something I'm very passionate about, something I enjoy quite a bit. And I thank you for letting me rant and rave about hats. And please leave me your comments. I would love to know, do you have a milliner? Do you have a hat maker? Do you have someone who is phenomenal and you want to share with me, because I will definitely investigate and purchase. And any tips, any hair tips for wearing hats? Any of you, hair people out there? There's a lot that goes on to wearing a hat, and so just enjoy your posh life, wear your hats, and go out there and make some awesome memories. We'll see you next time. Take care.